The laughter still echoes in my mind, sharp, glittering, and cruelly beautiful. My sister stands at the center of our living room, twirling the keys to her brand new house under the soft glow of our family chandelier. My parents beam, like proud royalty, the kind of pride reserved for a daughter who never had to earn it. Champagne glasses clink, the smell of expensive perfume fills the air, and all I can do is stare at the gift in my lap. A folded floral blanket wrapped in thin paper that's already tearing at the edges. "For your apartment," Mom had said, her tone casual, dismissive. That's the night I learned love in our house came with a price tag, and I wasn't worth much before we go deep. Where are you watching from? Growing up in the Collins household felt like living in two different worlds divided by the same walls. My sister, Lily, existed in sunlight, soft laughter, endless attention, every mistake forgiven before it even happened. I lived in the quiet corners, the dependable one, the fixer, the daughter who learned early that silence was safer than asking for fairness. My parents never said it out loud, but I saw it in the smallest things. The way Mom's eyes softened when Lily pouted, the way Dad's tone lifted when she entered the room. I used to count how many times they said her name compared to mine. It was never close. When I was 9, Lily wanted to be a ballerina. They hired a private instructor and bought her satin slippers imported from Italy. When I asked for a sketchbook that same week, Mom said, "We don't need to waste money on hobbies you'll outgrow." So I drew on the back of my math worksheets with broken pencils, creating entire skylines between equations. I learned to find beauty in what was left behind. By high school, the difference had deepened into something harder to ignore. When I brought home straight A's, Dad patted my shoulder like he was congratulating an employee. When Lily made the cheer squad, he bought her a gold necklace. "You have your brains," Mom would say, whenever I looked hurt, as if intelligence could replace affection. She meant it as comfort. It only reminded me that love wasn't the language we spoke. Comparison was. I remember one night vividly. It was winter, cold enough to see your breath in the air. Lily had snuck out to a party, and when she came home past midnight, reeking of alcohol, my parents grounded her for exactly 1 day, which ended the moment she cried. The next week, they took her shopping to lift her spirits. That same month, when I came home late from a study group, they accused me of irresponsibility and grounded me for a week. I didn't cry. I just nodded and went to my room. That's the thing about being the strong one. No one checks if your strength is just exhaustion wearing armor. College only widened the distance. Lily got into an art school she never attended consistently, her tuition paid by my parents without hesitation. I chose engineering because it offered stability, structure, and a way to build something that couldn't be taken away. My scholarship covered most of it, and I worked nights at a coffee shop to afford the rest. Every paycheck went to rent, books, and the dream that one day I'd have a home where I didn't feel like a guest. I remember calling home one weekend, my voice bright with news that I'd been offered an internship at a top architecture firm. Dad's response was simple. "That's nice, sweetheart. Your sister just got her art featured in a local gallery." It wasn't even her gallery, just a friend's coffee shop. But the praise that followed was endless. "We always knew she'd find her way," Mom said. I waited for her to say something about me too. She never did. By the time I graduated, the pattern wasn't just visible, it was permanent. Lily got a new car as a graduation gift. I got a check for a few $100s with a note that said, "We're proud of you." I told myself I didn't care, that I didn't need them to see me, but deep down I did. Every child does, no matter how old they get. Years passed and I climbed the professional ladder one project at a time. I was designing homes for people who wanted to feel safe to belong. Two things I'd never truly known. Lily bounced between relationships and careers, posting curated photos that my mother shared proudly on Facebook. Our little artist, she'd write, her pride glowing through every pixel. I learned to scroll past it without reacting. Then came that December night. The one that broke what little illusion I still held. Mum called me with her big news voice. The one she used when Lily accomplished something worth celebrating. "We're doing something special for your sister," she said. "She and Chris are getting married soon, and we want to help them start their life the right way." I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. Still, I drove home from Seattle to Portland that weekend, holding on to a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The moment I walked into the house, I knew it wasn't. Balloons, champagne, and an oversized red bow sat in the driveway, wrapped around the car parked in front of the house I'd grown up in. The housewarming party was already in motion. Laughter filled every corner, the kind that makes you feel invisible when you're the only one not laughing. My sister was radiant, champagne in hand, gushing over the details. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a backyard for the kids. My parents smiled proudly, basking in her joy like it was sunlight they owned. I stood by the doorway, holding a single wrapped gift I'd brought them, a framed blueprint I'd designed, a symbol of the home I dreamed of building someday. When Mum handed me a small package, I felt a flicker of anticipation, stupid, naive hope. Inside was a blanket, thin, floral, folded neatly. "Something cozy for your apartment," she said, as if generosity could be measured in square inches. "We know you don't need much," I laughed softly, to keep from crying. That was the moment everything inside me went silent, the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from final understanding. They hadn't forgotten me. They just never saw me as someone worth remembering. That night, after the party, I didn't say goodbye. I placed the blueprint on the kitchen counter and walked out. My car headlights cut through the fog, the road stretching endlessly ahead. The floral blanket sat on the passenger seat untouched. It wasn't a gift anymore. It was a symbol, the last one I'd ever accept from them. And as the city lights disappeared in my rearview mirror, I made myself a quiet promise. If they would never build a place for me in their world, I would build one for myself from the ground up. The road from Portland to Seattle that night felt longer than it ever had before. The hum of the tires was the only sound keeping me company, each mile pulling me farther from the house where I had spent my entire life trying to be enough. By the time the skyline appeared, grey and distant against the dawn, my chest felt hollow. Grief does that to you. It empties you out, leaving only space for something new to take root. For the first few weeks, I buried myself in work. The firm became my world. Blueprints, meetings, site visits, deadlines. My team didn't know the storm I'd driven away from. They only saw a woman who never missed a beat, who showed up early and left last, whose designs won bids, and whose calculations never cracked. What they didn't know was that every project I built on paper became my therapy. I was designing what I never had, a sense of belonging, walls that didn't cave in under pressure, foundations that never failed. My apartment was small but mine. The rent wasn't cheap, but I paid it proudly every month. I framed the blanket my parents gave me and hung it inside the hall closet, not as a reminder of them, but of who I refused to be ever again. The next 2 years blurred into motion. Contracts, construction sites, late nights fueled by cheap coffee and expensive dreams. I was becoming someone my parents wouldn't even recognize, and part of me wanted it that way. Then came the opportunity. A new luxury housing development in the Pacific Northwest. 20 custom, designed homes for high-profile clients. The kind of project that could define a career. My boss, Mr. Keller, handed me the proposal in a sleek grey folder. "You'll be lead architect," he said. "The first client requested you personally." His words barely registered. My hands were trembling as I opened the file. When I saw the name on the first page, my breath caught. Client, Lily Collins, my sister. The irony hit me like a wave. The sister who got her house handed to her now wanted to build one, and through me. I sat there in silence, the edges of the paper cutting lightly into my fingers. I could have refused, could have asked for reassignment, but I didn't. I accepted, because life had just handed me something my parents never did. Control. When we met for the consultation, she was all smiles, dressed in designer clothes, her tone syrupy sweet. She said our parents were thrilled that I'd be working on her dream home. I just nodded and took notes. No confrontation, no bitterness, just quiet observation. Her wish list was endless: open concept kitchen, imported marble floor to ceiling windows, and a private studio for her creative work. I wrote down every request with the same precision I used for skyscrapers. Every inch of her dream home would be perfect, because I wanted no one to ever question my work. Weeks turned into months. I visited the site daily, supervising contractors and walking through half-finished rooms. Every time I looked at the structure rising from the dirt, I saw something poetic about it, a monument to all the ways she'd been handed what I had to earn. But something shifted inside me too. The more I built her house, the less anger I felt. Revenge wasn't about destruction anymore, it was about creation. I didn't want to tear her down, I wanted to rise higher. Midway through construction, a new listing appeared in my inbox from a local realtor. The lot next to Lily's property had gone up for sale. 1/2 an acre with a better view and direct access to the hillside road. My heartbeat quickened. I didn't even hesitate. I called the realtor that same day. 2 weeks later, the deed was in my name, paid for. No loans, no co-signers. Just me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't competing for space. I was owning it. When Lily's house neared completion, our parents came to tour the property. I remember standing in the living room, watching Mum trace her fingers over the marble countertops I had personally designed. "You did all this?" she asked, almost surprised. I smiled every inch. They congratulated Lily, of course, for her beautiful taste. But this time, their words didn't sting. I knew the truth. They were standing inside something I had built, something their favoritism could never take credit for. When the open house arrived, it wasn't just a celebration for her, it was my quiet reclamation. Cameras flashed, champagne poured, and my parents introduced me to guests as our other daughter, the architect. For years, I'd been invisible. Now, they couldn't tell Lily's story without including my name. Still, I stayed composed. I waited, because I knew the final act hadn't happened yet. After everyone left, I stood outside beneath the fading sun, watching the last of the construction crew pack up. The light hit the lot next door, where surveyors had just begun marking the outline of my future home. I could almost see it in my mind: glass walls, open design, strong beams that caught the morning light. For the first time in my life, I was building not for them, not for validation, but for myself. Every beam, every bolt, every line of blueprint whispered the same truth. I didn't need to be chosen to create something extraordinary. That night, I walked the empty halls of Lily's finished home, the air still heavy with fresh paint and sawdust. My reflection glimmered faintly in the polished windows. 2 worlds divided by a single pane of glass. Hers, given, mine, earned. And I finally understood what my entire life had been preparing me for. It wasn't revenge through destruction. It was revenge through success, the kind that doesn't scream. It shines. The day of the housewarming felt almost unreal, like stepping into a dream I had once drawn on paper. Lily's new home gleamed under the Pacific Northwest sunlight: white stone, glass facades, modern lines softened by lush greenery. Every detail was intentional, from the floating staircase to the wraparound balcony overlooking the valley. I'd designed it as a masterpiece, not for her, but for my own peace, to prove silently that I could build perfection out of the pieces they once left me to pick up. My heels clicked across the marble entryway as I walked through the space I'd created. Guests moved like slow rivers of luxury: velvet dresses, champagne flutes, practiced smiles. The sound of expensive laughter filled the air. Lily stood in the center, glowing with self-importance, accepting praise she hadn't earned. "My architect sister did wonders," she said, flashing me that familiar patronizing grin, the same one she'd worn all our lives when she got what I didn't. Our parents stood nearby, chatting with the investors who helped finance Lily's art studio. Mom was radiant, pearls at her neck, eyes shining with pride. Dad's voice carried easily above the crowd. We always knew both our girls would make us proud. Lily, with her creativity, and Iris, well, she's always been dependable. That word again, dependable. The invisible applause meant for the background characters. I felt the old sting rise, but I stayed silent, smiling politely. They didn't know yet. The mayor's assistant clinked a glass, calling for attention. "A toast to Lily Collins," he said. "To the artist, the visionary, and to this incredible home she brought to life." Applause erupted, echoing through the high ceilings. My heart thudded quietly beneath the noise. I waited for the moment after, the silence that always follows applause, and then I spoke. "Actually," I said, my voice calm even, "there's something you should know about this home." Heads turned. Conversations stopped. I could feel Lily stiffen beside me, her smile faltering. "Every inch of this house," I continued, "was built by my design, from foundation to roofline. Every beam, every detail, every blueprint carries my name." I gestured toward the large brass plaque near the front door, something no one had noticed yet. Beneath the soft lighting, it read, "Architectural Design by Iris Collins." Whispers rippled through the crowd, like wind through tall grass. My parents' faces shifted, first confusion, then shock. I didn't stop there. "And for those who admire the view from these windows," I said, turning toward the glass wall that opened onto the hillside, "you'll be seeing quite a bit more of me. I recently purchased the property next door. My new home will break ground next month." The silence that followed was heavy, electric. My mother's fingers tightened around her wineglass until it trembled. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came. Lily's complexion drained of color. "You bought the lot," she managed to whisper, her voice brittle beneath her smile. I nodded. "Yes, with the money I earned from building this." It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. No screaming, no spectacle. Just the quiet unveiling of truth. Me standing tall in the middle of everything they once thought I'd never have. The applause that followed wasn't for her this time. It came hesitantly at first, then grew as people realized the weight of what I'd said. Every congratulatory smile turned toward me. Every question about design and contracts found its way in my direction. Lily stood frozen, her perfect image fracturing under the spotlight she once thought belonged only to her. Later, as the crowd thinned and the music softened, I found myself standing outside, bathed in the golden light of evening. My parents approached together, their faces etched with the weight of unspoken words. "You didn't tell us," Mom said finally, her tone trembling between pride and disbelief. "You never asked," I replied softly. Lily appeared a few feet away, mascara smudged beneath her eyes, her once confident posture deflated. She opened her mouth, searching for words, but none came. I didn't need her apology. Her silence said enough. When the last guest left, I lingered a moment longer in the entryway. The house looked different now, beautiful but hollow. Everything in it felt curated. Surface level, staged for admiration. I thought about my own lot next door, bare earth waiting for its first blueprint. That's where my future was, not in the echoes of a home built to impress. As I turned to leave, my father called out. "Iris," he said, voice low, uncertain, almost fragile. "You did good. It wasn't the apology I'd once prayed for, but maybe it was the only version he could give." The night air was cool when I stepped outside, the wind carrying the faint scent of cedar and fresh paint. I looked back once at the house glowing under soft lights. For the first time, I saw it clearly. not as a symbol of everything I'd been denied, but as proof of what I could create on my own. I didn't steal her spotlight. I built my own stage, and in the silence that followed, I realized that the most powerful revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's no longer needing them to see you at all. A year later, sunlight filters through floor to ceiling windows of my new home, pooling across polished oak floors and the soft beige rug beneath my bare feet. The valley hums quietly beyond the glass, birdsong wind through tall cedar, the slow rhythm of a world that finally feels like mine. My morning coffee tastes different here. Maybe it's the peace, or maybe it's what it means to drink it in a house. I designed not for profit, not for show, but for belonging. The walls are clean, bright, uncluttered. No grand portraits, no trophies, just photographs of my projects and a framed sketch. The first skyline I drew as a little girl on the back of a math worksheet. Beneath it, folded neatly in a shadow box, rests the old floral blanket my parents once gave me. The edges are frayed now, but under glass it looks almost elegant, transformed by context. It's no longer an insult. It's a relic of everything I overcame outside. The sun rises over the ridge, spilling gold over two neighboring houses. Mine and Lily's, her home, still stands pristine, but it feels different now. She moved out months ago, after she and her husband separated. I don't know all the details, and I don't need to. We exchange polite nods when we cross paths at the local cafe, but the air between us carries something new, quiet respect. Maybe she finally understands the weight of what she was given, and what I had to earn. Last Christmas, an envelope arrived at my doorstep. Inside was a single handwritten note from my parents. No grand gestures, no excuses, just 2 sentences. We're proud of you. We're sorry. It took us this long to say it. I read it once, smiled faintly, and set it aside. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had already built my own. Now, when I stand on my balcony, I can see the horizon stretching far beyond what I used to think was possible below. Workers are finishing a new community center, one funded through my firm's foundation. A space for underprivileged kids who dream of becoming architects, engineers, and creators. A place for the ones who were told they didn't belong. The first scholarship recipient's name is Maya, a quiet girl with calloused hands and a sketchbook full of imagination. When she showed me her designs, her eyes shone with the same hunger I once had. I told her, "Keep drawing. Build what they say you can't sometimes." I still visit the empty room in my house that overlooks the valley, the one that catches the best light in the morning. I sit on the floor with a notebook, tracing ideas for future projects. There's no noise here, no competition, no measuring worth in gifts or gestures, just quiet creation, line by line, beam by beam. On my mantel sits a small brass plaque engraved with a single phrase, "Worth isn't given, it's built." I run my fingers over the words every morning, reminding myself how far I've come from the girl who once accepted scraps disguised as love. The irony is poetic. My parents once told me I should be grateful for a blanket, and now I've built an empire from the thread of that very moment. I don't hate them. I don't even resent them anymore. I understand them. They gave all their love to the daughter who needed constant saving, and in the process, they accidentally created one who would never need saving at all. When the evening light turns the valley gold, I stand by the window and breathe deeply. The air feels softer now. The silence doesn't ache. The past no longer echoes. It hums quietly beneath my feet, part of the foundation that holds me steady. The girl they overlooked built her own home, her own peace, and her own name. And as the sun sets over the life I created from nothing, I whisper to the reflection in the glass, I was never waiting for their love. I was building mine.